Welcome to week 8, working problems with precise decimal measurements this week. I don't have much new to share with you, so I'm going to show you a few slides and ask you to just pause and practice your language on the 9 quantities. And now I'll remind you of some of the kinds of things we measured. We measured them with whole numbers and fractions. But there were times, like grams and kilograms, where it was useful to work with decimals. Money and meters, parts of meters. So the metric system and money are great places to think about decimal measurements. We met lots of units. Practice your language. Pause and practice your language. But it's all in the language because you're going to talk 6 hours a day when you're in front of those students. And your language either makes it make sense or makes those eyes glaze over like, what is she talking about? Once again, pause and talk about the addition and subtraction problems, multiplication and division problems. They'll be no different when you do them with decimals. So let's see. Since it's decimals, I'll work a couple problems for you. Kim has a ribbon that is 45 hundredths of a meter long. That's 4/10 and 5 hundredths of a meter long. A tenth of a meter is a decimeter. I can see it on the measuring stick. And 100th of a meter is a centimeter. So 4 decimeters and 5 centimeters. Yeah. And now they're asking me to write it in fractions instead. So let's see, that's 4/10 and 5 hundredths. I've already said that. Super. All right. Oops, I forgot my question. Who's counting? Kim. What's she counting? The length of ribbon. So it's a length. And she's not organizing them in any way. They're just giving it to you in one representation and asking you in a different representation. All right. Kate walks 65 hundredths of a kilometer to school each day. So who's counting? Kate. Looks like Jane is also counting. She walks 47 hundredths of a kilometer to school each day. And let's see, 65 hundredths of a kilometer. So what's a tenth of a kilometer and a hundredth of a kilometer? So let's see, there's meters and there's decameters, which would be 10. So 6/10 of a kilometer means 6 decameters. See how we can make sense of each part of it? We can add her 6 decameters to her 4 decameters and get 10 decameters. And 10 decameters is a kilometer. That's how we found out what a decameter was. It was because it took 10 of them to make a kilometer. All right, so let's see. Kate and Jane, they're measuring their distance to school in kilometers. Are we organizing it? Well, we got Kate's and Jane's, and I think we're just comparing them. So there's 65 hundredths in one and 47 hundredths in the other, and we're asking about the total or the difference, and I think here we're asking about the difference, but really we're not even asking you to calculate the difference, just which one is bigger. Well, it takes so many of those hundredths to make a tenth. And so really, let's look at the tenths. 6/10 is bigger than 4/10. Yep. And those 7 hundredths are never going to make up another one to give her 5 tenths, so she'll never catch up with Kate. So Kate's are clearly more than Jane's. Let's see. So Kate walks longer, so that's A or B. Oh, and why? Because 6/10 is greater than 4/10. Isn't that what we said? Yeah. So first of all, it's not because 500ths is bigger than 700ths, because 500ths is not bigger than 700ths. All right, who's counting? John. And what is he counting? He rides his bike, the distance he rides his bike. Oops, and Angie is also riding, and she rides 100 times as far as John. Ah, I see it. So John and Angie, what are they counting and measuring? The distance they ride their bike, and how are they organizing it? They're organizing it by John's and Angie's is 100 times more than John's. So you see this 2/10 of a mile? If you multiply that by tenths, you get a whole mile, because tenths times 10 is a mile. So it would have 2 miles. Multiply that by another 10 and you'll get 20 miles. So you can see B is going to be the answer. See that 3/100ths of a mile multiplied by 100? 3/100ths times 100 is 3. Yeah, so 23 miles. Sorry. So how many groups? So you could say we have 100 groups with 23/100ths of a mile in each, and we just multiplied to get the total, which was 23. All the time talking about those units as though they're real things. We're not talking about the decimal point and lining them up and all that, but real things. 2/10 times 10 is 2 wholes. Times 10 is 20. All right. So we're coming to the end of our kinds of numbers. Still have our 9 quantities. We've met our whole numbers, our fractions, and our decimals now, and we've both adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing the last of them this week. Yeah. Wow. This is elementary school mathematics. We ask who's counting or measuring and what they're counting or measuring, and we get one of these 9 things. And then we ask how they're organizing them, and they're either organizing them in groups, different parts, Sally's and Jane's, or red ones and blue ones, or in multiplication and division. So they're in groups instead, in equal groups. Yeah, so we could say groups of unequal sizes, in which case we must be adding and subtracting, or groups of the same size, in which case we're multiplying and dividing. And then we either ask how many in each part, and the rule of difference, that's for addition and subtraction, or we ask how many groups for multiplication and division. And when we do that counting and measuring, we get one of these 3 numbers. So really, these questions, what are you counting? One of the 9 quantities. How are you organizing them, either in parts or groups? Parts gives addition and subtraction. Groups give multiplication and division. And when we count or measure, we get some numbers, either whole numbers, fractions, and decimals. This is the whole of elementary school mathematics. And we've worked with all of this in our 8 weeks together. I hope that we've brought some coherence for you across the K-5, helping you to think more about the meaning than hundreds of sections in the textbook that you have to cover and thousands of problems you have to teach the children to work. Those problems will be worked as you talk about these real meaningful things that we count and measure and add and subtract and multiply and divide. Hope it's coming together for you. We have 2 more weeks to wrap it all up. And that's what we'll be doing, bringing it all together.